Rhaeadr and Pistyll Rhaeadr, and I welcome you all back to Wales. Now today I'm taking a hike in a place that holds a special significance to me. Since I was knee-high, I've been taken here to explore the rocks, the forests, and enjoy the spectacular falls of Pistyll Rhaeadr. This miraculous natural feature is held as one of the 7 wonders of Wales. And at a mighty 240 feet tall, it plunges down from the Pistyll Mountains in 3 stages. About 73 meters high this is. That's taller than the highest point of the Niagara Falls. This waterfall is hidden within the Pistyll Mountains, a range thick of marshy bogland, unforgiving weather, but nonetheless holds a beautiful state to admire when you get to the highest peak of Cadair Berwyn. The solid mountain rock that this waterfall crashes against was formed 25 million years ago during a period known as the Silurian. Now the Silurian gets its name from an Iron Age tribe that roamed Britain long ago, about 2,000 years ago. But again, that is overshadowed by the age of these rocks that the water continues to carve. But most of this formation of rocks and mountains around us was actually created during the Ice Age, about 13,000 years ago. Just like Snowdonia, this land here was covered in a glacier. And as these glaciers melted, they dragged the mountain down and formed much of the valley we can see today. Behind me, we can see lots of rocks covered in sphagnum and different sorts of moss. When I was little, I was told these were sleeping trolls. But really, these were rocks dragged down the mountain during a violent and aggressive period when the ice glaciers were collapsing. Now if that waterfall inspires you to go further into the mountains and see more wonders of Wales, then there are 2 trails that you can take that come from around the corner of the waterfall itself. The one trail I'm taking is following this stream high up into the moorland. That will take me to the peak of Cadair Berwyn, which is the highest mountain point in northeast Wales. And as you follow this trail, you can see most of the scenery around me is heathland, covered in bracken, and still has a few farm animals upon it. But be wary, because locally, this land and the moorland up here is known as Rhos y Beddau. And in Welsh, that means they're known as the Moor of the Graves. That's probably because there's a lot of Bronze Age and Iron Age grave marks upon here. However, the name is also quite fitting because there's been many a walker that have come up here ill-prepared in regards to experience, navigation skills and just getting themselves lost. Because up in the Berwyns, it is very samey, especially high up in the moorland. And like I say, hidden streams and bogs, if you fall into them, you'll get wet. And your body temperature drops 30 times quicker than if you weren't. And just to reaffirm that, in the Berwyns, like I said, hidden streams. You can see it right in front of me. And not only that, where there's sphagnum or long grass such as this, it tends to be very deep marshland. Here's one thing, if you do get caught out here in very unforgiving weather and you have a survival bag, whatever have you, and depending on the wind direction, you can see these bits of moorland here that seems to be eroded away. But actually, this is created by the livestock up here, sheep. They eat away into the ground here to give themselves shelter from the harsh wind above. And to be honest, if you are caught out here for whatever reason and you do have warm clothing just to wear it out for a while, maybe finding a bit of shelter like this in the land with not much shelter, quite life-saving. But today, with weather, I'm experiencing an awful lot of high pressure. It's beautiful. When I mean by high pressure, that means there's a lot of pressure being pushed down upon the earth, which kind of gets rid of all the moisture in the air, which creates cloud and low visibility. So I shouldn't be experiencing any traditional unforgiving Welsh mountain weather. But again, it's wise to never take a mountain and its weather by face value. Things can always change. So it's good to keep that in mind. Now, if you are a lover of myths and legends, this landscape is scattered in them. In fact, you couldn't find anywhere better to tell a story when you're walking high up in the hills. But one story, which is leading me along this path here, is tied to this stream and the Clin that is high up in the bowl, in a coombe underneath Cadair Berwyn. Now legend has it, way back in the mists of time, there was a village down south from Pistyll Rhaeadr. You also had a little village called Pistyll Rhaeadr and Llangedwin. These little hamlets were peaceful people despite living in a land torn by war. But it wasn't raiding parties that struck fear into the hearts of the men, women and children there, but a beast that called these mountains its home. Now this creature, described in the local folklore around here, is much like a dragon. And when it came, it sounded like the sky was being torn open. And as the villagers first started to experience this evil, sheep went missing, livestock were disappearing, and all that would be remained was a very bloody scene. But over time, this creature started to become more sinister with its prey. Dogs started disappearing, and then children, and then young women. The greed of this dragon started to become more like bloodlust. At the start, sheep, livestock were only going missing every couple of months in the year. But as it started to seem to get a taste for humans, the sky was cracking more often in the weeks. The extent of death and loss of family members drove these villagers to come together to fight this evil. Now these villagers all knew they had a great challenge ahead of them. None of them were great warriors or seasoned in battle, and nor did they have money to barter or buy warriors to come and fight this beast. And another issue was that not many of them had seen this creature or know of its weaknesses. All they know is it's got a serious taste for blood. So over the year, they tried and tested different theories on getting this beast, but each time they came away with nothing, just lost more lives. But one day, one farmer high up in the Berwyns kind of described his characteristics like a bear. It was quite territorial. So what he decided to do was create a beast from the descriptions of the few eyewitnesses and place it at the bottom of the mountain. But as well as creating this beast, they wanted to temper what plagued them down instead of being diverted off into the other farmsteads. So they pulled together and gathered all their livestock and placed it at the foot of their pretend dragon. But as well, and this is where it gets a bit controversial, they all drew blood of their young daughters and painted it all over this mockery of a dragon. They gathered their blacksmiths and together they created an iron stake strong enough and big enough to pierce whatever size of creature this was. They waited throughout the night, all villagers praying to whatever god they held for some sort of peace. But again in the morning, as the sun started to rise, the sky cracked once more. But within only half an hour, they heard a great cry that shoved fear even into the bravest man of the village. The elders and the chosen few braved their way into this valley. What they saw was a creature worthy of their fear. This creature struck so much fear into the men that saw it, they didn't even want to claim its head as a trophy prize. Instead, they pared its body up and burnt it. This was to make sure that whatever evil mustered this creature from the other world would never be able to rise again. They gathered the remains of its bones and its ash, and he buried it somewhere upon this moorland. Interestingly enough, back in the 6th century, a Roman Latin writer described this region of Britain. He described it as a wild, dark place, full of vipers and venomous men who'll sell their soul for less if they could feed you. And I kind of can imagine that to a certain degree, because even now today, the Berwyns are a dark location. And not just because of its weather, but just because of the different shades that the mountains offer you. Like you see right behind me, I've got this beautiful green sphagnum. But then littered over these mountains are dark bracken and boggy terrain. And the idea that this land would have been quite wild in respects to people, I can understand that as well. Because Wales has always been the wild west of Britain, going well into the Norman period and the medieval period, and even into the 18th century. There's always been highwaymen and lawless sort of regions of Wales. It's a difficult place to try and manage. But with this landscape also comes legend, as I said. And one thing that is tied to the mountains here, it has always been known to be the southern boundary of the mythical ancient world of Arun. Now, Arun is featured a lot in ancient Welsh folklore and writing. There's a book called the Mab Igorion, which is one of the oldest storybooks in Britain. All written in Welsh, it features many tales of this ancient world. And in fact, this ancient world is even featured in Irish as well as Scottish mythology. But Arun was the other world, the land of fairy folk and magic and supernatural beings. This land looked very much like ours, but brighter, greener. The food was more luscious, the land was more plentiful, and where things that we take as miracles or seem as common day occurrences for them. Now, Arun is described as a pagan paradise, a land that would only open up to the purest of heart. Now, those who ventured in these regions of the mountains would be offered the opportunity to see the portal into their world. It's kind of like an upside down sort of thing, like in Stranger Things. But unlike upside down, Arun is not a sinister location. You could either stumble upon this world by entering a marshy bog such as that, or through a waterfall, or something more dramatic like a great body of water, like a Clyn, just below Cadair Berwyn. But just because you are entering this world, don't guarantee that you can leave. Now, in ancient scriptures or stories that have been passed down through folklore, what you must not do whilst you're in Arun is give in to temptation. It's a little bit of Christian influence into this pagan story, but hear me out. Once you enter this world, the wine, the food, the water will be sweeter and more nutritious than it is of ours. But also the fairy folk and the elves, the creatures that inhabit that world, will tempt you with lust. And if you lie with one of these creatures, drink the wine, eat the meat, the gateway home will forever be lost to you, and you'll be stranded in this world of paradise forever. Now, the results of being trapped in Arun, with this land of plenty and beauty, may not have seen as the most hammering blow to be given, especially for the situations our ancient ancestors found themselves in. Most of our ancestors, way back in the midst of time, lived hand to mouth. They relied on the seasons. A bad season could mean a mealless winter. And the weathers up here as well could very much dictate how your life would lead. But not only that, in the cities and towns, rife in plague, and the lord of your land had free reign over your life. Your life was not as free as many people believe it to be. But despite this, we are not a part of Arun. The world is alien to us and we are alien to it. It is said you will spend the rest of your life in a sense of he life. Now, being stuck in he life and in a land that did not create you, you'll soon go mad and wish for your life to be cut short. So here is a warning to all of you that wanders the wilds of Wales. If you hold true to ancient folklore, be wary if you stumble upon music high up in these hills. Be wary if you see a white light come from any spring or water feature. Because if you are the type to easily give in to temptation and you enter this world of Arun, just like in Hotel California, you will never be able to leave. Now I've made my way down from the higher regions of the Berwins, and I've got myself into a very barren valley where there is a stream called Afron Duscavar. That stream feeds the waterfall of Pistyll Rhaeadr, the highest waterfall in Wales and England. Now Pistyll Rhaeadr is also tied to the legends of Arun, but also featured in Arthurian legend and ancient Welsh writing. This world was guarded by the god of Arun, and that was Gwyn ap Nudd. He has many names in ancient Celtic custom. Within this story, he was known to protect the gold and the spoils of this ancient world. And there within the story, Arthur and this god engaged in fierce fighting. Gwyn ap Nudd is also tied to this waterfall in other tales. One such tale is of the Tywydd Teg, known to be the hounds of mothers and fairies, or known as the Wild Hunt. The Tywydd Teg are accompanied by these mighty hounds, hounds of the other world, white in skin but red ears and teeth as sharp enough to take down any boar that a spear could not pierce. These souls are sent out from Arun as a raiding party to claim the souls of those who are not resting. No matter how canny you thought you were in life for hiding from the law, or keeping yourself hidden from those you wish not to be seen by, if your soul is wandering and the horn is blown, the hounds will find you and drag you to the place where you're meant to be resting. On religious holidays or pagan traditional festivals such as Samhain, on Cadair Idris and upon these moors, legend has it you can hear the cries of dogs and the horns of Arun. And if souls are truly wandering on that night, legend has it they will not be wandering by daybreak. Our ancient ancestors related much of what we've seen in the world to the stories that we now hear. Living in places like this, way back in the mist of time, you can see why they related the world to such a mystical idea. Everything around here was godlike to them, from the trees to the water to the weather. The weather gave them plentiful harvests, gave them opportunities to become prosperous, as well as gave them cruelty and most often death. Lands such as this are amazing places to go wandering, and as I said throughout this video, places to be wary and to be respected. If you're ever in this part of the world and want to go exploring, respect the land. Whatever comes with you goes home with you, such as litter, clothing, or anything else you bring within your adventure out. But if you want to learn about these stories, there are plenty of opportunities for you to do so, from books to blogs on the internet. I elaborate my stories as they've been elaborated to me by my family and my family before them. But it's a great way to become a part of the story here and to look at this landscape more than just rock and soil. So again, come here, be safe, enjoy Wales, respect Wales, and become part of Wales' story. Hwyl fawr.